Tonight, shock and sorrow grip Vancouver, the community now reeling after a deadly attack.
He just pushed the gas all the way through the whole block right there.
An SUV plows through a crowd, turning an evening of celebration into a nightmare.
Our community is grieving. I'm heartbroken.
The victims and what we know about the man facing murder charges. Security concerns over the latest incident to use a vehicle as a weapon.
I want to know how we can avoid an incident like this from ever happening again.
And offering condolences on the campaign trail, how the tragedy changed the direction of the final day of the election. Plus, the burning issue in coal country.
Without them, the community is going to die.
What has voters in a Saskatchewan town fired up?
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We begin tonight with devastating scenes of heartbreak in Vancouver, where a celebration at a Filipino street festival turned deadly, shattered by a driver who used his SUV as a weapon. He's facing multiple murder charges, though his motive remains unclear. People gathered for a vigil this evening, mourning the overwhelming loss. At least 11 people killed, more than 24 others injured. The horrific images after the vehicle plowed through the crowd. Officials say the suspect is known to authorities. Our coverage begins with BC's Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson, who is at the scene for us tonight. Andrew.
Heather, people near the scene of this attack are trying to get their head around how what had been such a joyous day could turn so terrible so quickly on what Vancouver police are calling the darkest day in this city's history.
Welcome to Lapu Lapu Day!
It was a day of celebration in the sunshine that ended in chaos and death.
Oh my God!
About 8:15 Saturday night, the Lapu Lapu Filipino Festival was winding down when a black SUV plowed through a pedestrian-packed street.
You saw just carnage. It was like a bowling ball hitting bowling pins and bodies flying in the air.
Partying turned to panic and sheer terror.
There's a baby over there!
First responders raced in to help the injured left laying in the road. For some victims, it was already too late. Vancouver police say 11 are confirmed dead. The oldest was 65, the youngest just 5 years old.
This is a tragedy the likes of which the city has never experienced before.
When the SUV came to a stop, witnesses grabbed the driver. Police arrested 30-year-old Kaiji Adam Lowe. He's been charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder. Vancouver police are still working to determine a motive, but say they are confident this is not a case of terrorism.
The person we have in custody does have a significant history of interactions with police and healthcare professionals related to mental health.
Vancouver's Filipino community has been left shattered and numb.
We are in incredible pain. The Filipino community will show true resilience, and we will come together out of this catastrophe.
The Premier says they won't be doing it alone.
I don't think there's a British Columbian that hasn't been touched in some way by the Filipino community. You can't go to a place that delivers care in our province and not meet a member of that community. It's their turn. It's their turn to get care from us.
It is still so early in this community's grieving process, only hours after the attack, but it has already become clear Metro Vancouver, BC, and the entire country are standing in solidarity with Filipino Canadians. Heather?
Andrew, thank you. There are serious questions about whether this ramming attack could have been prevented. As CTV's Shannon Patterson reports, Vancouver's mayor is ordering a full review of security protocols around every public event.
This fence at the corner of Fraser and 41st has become a makeshift memorial to lay flowers, to gather, and to grieve.
I think a lot of us are at a loss of what to do.
It is hard to make sense of something so senseless, and I know there are questions about whether this tragedy could have been prevented.
The city and Vancouver police conducted a risk assessment prior to the Lapu Lapu festival, which was primarily held on the grounds of John Oliver Secondary School.
The only public roadway that required partial closure was on a minor street behind the high school. And this area was designated for food trucks. And there were no known threats to the event or to the Filipino community.
So there were no dedicated police officers or heavy equipment barricades at the festival site.
Any kind of heavy equipment, is it, bollards, heavy equipment, the big trucks, they all do a good job of controlling that access. But again, it's about what's appropriate in the specific circumstances.
Do you think that maybe that should have happened here?
Yeah, I think it should have happened.
Heavy vehicle barricades were deployed for the Taylor Swift concerts in December, and they're used at the annual Vancouver Vaisakhi parade.
When I went to Vaisakhi, they had trucks blocking the roads. Even though it's a minor side street road, they should have had trucks, big heavy dump trucks.
This security expert believes all major events in the city will be looked at differently now.
Definitely this will just shift how people are looking at the risks. Sometimes these things happen elsewhere. But it hits very different when it's in your neighborhood and in your city.
Of course, going forward, it goes without saying this will change the landscape for deployment for police.
For Vancouverites who came to the scene, someone driving through a packed festival crowd is simply inconceivable.
How do you anticipate somebody doing something like that?
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Vancouver.
The leaders of the three main federal parties paused campaigns to express their sorrow and offer condolences. The tragedy changing the direction and tone of the final day of this election. CTV's Jamie Sharon on the response from Canadian leaders.
A somber start to the final day of the federal election campaign as leaders face the tragic news of what police are calling a mass casualty event at a Vancouver festival last night. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was there shortly before the attack happened.
We honor those we lost, not by giving in to fear, but by living their spirit, by building a Canada where no one is treated as disposable, where everyone belongs, where hate has no home. We carry forward the flame of resistance, the strength to stand tall, to protect one another, to never let hate define us.
Mark Carney and the Liberal Party canceled their first campaign event this morning to speak about the tragedy.
Last night, families lost a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, a son, or a daughter. Those families are living every family's nightmare. And to them and to the many others who were injured, to the Filipino-Canadian community, and to everyone in the broader Lower Mainland, Vancouver, I would like to offer my deepest condolences.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre delayed the start of his campaign day 2, addressing the incident during an unplanned stop at a church with ties to the Filipino community this morning.
Anna and I just wanted you all to know that our hearts are with you today. All Canadians are united in solidarity with the Filipino community. All Canadians are united with you in mourning the loss of these treasured lives and in binding our country together to support the surviving loved ones.
Both the Green Party and Bloc Québécois leaders also condemned the attack today, and most parties made changes to their schedules on this final day of the campaign. Heather?
Jeremy, thank you. Even with those changes, leaders did still connect with Canadians in communities right across this country, including in Vancouver, where Mark Carney is this evening. CTV's Mike Lacouture begins that part of our election coverage.
The tone of this campaign has certainly changed following the tragedy. After canceling 2 large rallies planned for today, Liberal leader Mark Carney made his way across the country, stopping in Vancouver to meet with members of the Filipino community and local officials. Carney joined BC Premier David Eby laying flowers at a makeshift memorial for the victims. The solemn moment came after a day of events for supporters and volunteers in Saskatoon, Edmonton, Richmond, BC, and another in Victoria. Now, this day was a test for Carney on his final day of his first campaign. He tried to strike a balance between his role as Prime Minister and his role as the leader of a party which is trying to form government again. To do that, the Liberals have visited a number of ridings where the seats are held by other parties, a clear sign that they're still on offense. The core of Carney's campaign has been the trade war with the United States and who is the leader that can stand up to President Donald Trump. In one of his last speeches of the campaign, Carney made his pitch to lead this country.
And as America retreats from the world, Canada will lead it.
After crossing most of the country in one day, Carney will head back on an overnight flight to Ottawa, where he'll spend Election Day. Mike Lecoulteur, CTV News, Vancouver.
For NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, the focus of the last day on the campaign trail wasn't about politics. It was about the victims of that street festival attack as he joined mourners for Mass on Sunday afternoon. The service took place at St. Mary's Parish in Vancouver. The sermon was conducted in Tagalog. The church has approximately 5,000 congregants. More than 80% of them are Filipino. NDP MP Don Davies represents the riding where the tragedy occurred. He heard the first sirens.
To have it transform into a deadly attack like that on innocent people is just shocking beyond belief. And I think, like the community, I'm still processing it.
On the national campaign, all events were canceled except for one in Penticton in the morning, where there's a tough battle for a seat being vacated by a retiring New Democrat. Half of all the party's 24 seats are in British Columbia. In his remarks, Singh urged Canadians to unite.
Hate is a poison. It feeds off isolation, fear, and despair. But the antidote is solidarity.
There are about 173,000 Filipinos living in British Columbia. Singh urged Canadians to wrap their arms around the community. Judy Trin, CTV News, Vancouver.
I'm Abigail Beeman, and I am in Edwards, Ontario, following the Conservative campaign. That's just outside of Ottawa, and it's notable because it's Pierre Poilievre's own riding. Now, in the final days of any campaign, parties generally are very targeted, making stops in ridings. They either think that they can win a new seat, or they're trying to protect a seat that could be lost. But the Conservative campaign consistently pushes back on the idea that Poilievre's own seat may be in jeopardy, saying ending here is in line with the campaign messaging of bring it home. After starting his day at a Mississauga church, speaking to the Filipino community about the horrific mass casualty in Vancouver, Poilievre hit 4 different ridings in Ontario, sticking to the original schedule. 2 in the Greater Toronto area, where Liberal incumbents are not running again. Then a stop in the Peterborough area, which could be a tight race, and which is interesting as it tends to be a bellwether. That means its voters elect someone from the party that forms government. Although that wasn't true in 2021, and a Conservative is now the incumbent. And then the final stop of the campaign, which has gone coast to coast in the last few days, here in Carleton, the rally Poilievre has held since 2004. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Edwards, Ontario.
And on the eve of Election Day, the gap between the Liberals and Conservatives remains slim. The very latest polling out tonight from Nanos Research conducted for CTV News shows the Liberals with 42.6% support, the Conservatives with 39.9%, the NDP still sit at less than 10%. For more insight, we turn to CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos. We're so focused on this tight race, Vashi, and tomorrow's results. But this story is far from over. What comes next?
Hi, Heather. Yeah, I know you've been talking tonight about how close the race is and how tight the polls are. And I think that also helps inform what a huge storyline coming out of the election will be and the unpredictability around it. And that is the future of the leaders of these 3 parties. If Mark Carney is not successful in becoming Prime Minister or staying on as Prime Minister, does he stick around? You can't imagine, particularly after sort of his interactions over the last 5 weeks that Mr. Carney is thrilled about the idea of sitting in the opposition benches. So that will be something to certainly watch for coming out of the election. And then you've got Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh is at risk of losing his own seat and the party of losing official status. If either or both of those things happen, I think talk will quickly turn to how long he remains on as leader. And Pierre Poilievre might offer a very unique situation in if they are unsuccessful in forming government, but do retain what public opinion polls say is a healthy level of support, something like 39–40%. Is that enough to enable him to fight to stay on as leader? His predecessors, Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole, though they won the popular vote in their elections, were not able to do so. So that will be a very interesting storyline as well. Lots to keep our eyes on even after the results come in, Heather.
Absolutely. Vashi, thank you. And you can catch our election special tomorrow night on all of our platforms starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. And a little later, we'll take you behind the scenes to see how it all comes together. Still ahead tonight, anguish in a small town.
The feds, they don't even return our calls anymore.
The pleas from a Saskatchewan community to party leaders as the election campaign draws to a close.
Canada is on the eve of an election that months ago appeared set for a very different race.
The last 4 months have been completely unprecedented in Canadian political history.
This was the beginning of what would prove to be a complete upheaval. Days after Justin Trudeau resigned, the Conservatives held a staggering 27-point lead. 2 months later, that lead was down to just 2 points. The biggest difference, Trudeau was out, Mark Carney stepped in, and Canada faced the full brunt of Donald Trump's tariffs. Those same tariffs helped the Liberals climb to a campaign-high 11-point lead by Trump's so-called Liberation Day. Now that gap is roughly back to where it started, even as both the Liberals and Conservatives increased their level of support.
I think one of the issues that will haunt the Liberal campaign is might they have done something more to keep the focus vigorously and resonantly on that set of issues, on the bilateral relationship, on Mark Carney's strengths as leader.
Recently, the Conservatives gained ground on the back of a heavy focus on change and launching a dramatic shift in their marketing, choosing not to feature Pierre Poilievre.
Poilievre continues to be a significant ballot drag on the Conservative Party, whereas Carney runs ahead of his party.
Poilievre has been unable to significantly shift his personal support and has consistently trailed Carney in preferred prime minister polling by double digits.
The Conservatives at around 39–38% support is an excellent level, usually enough to win an election. But in this environment, it's not enough to put the Conservatives over the top.
Ultimately, it could all come down to who gets their voters out and what's driving them. Polling shows for Conservatives, that's affordability and a new face leading Ottawa. For Liberals, it's the threat of Donald Trump. Heather.
Colton Prail in Ottawa. Thank you. With polls set to open in just a few hours, we're heading to Cornac, Saskatchewan, a small rural community minutes from the U.S. border. CTV's Allison Bamford finds out what's on the minds of voters there.
Nestled in the big muddy badlands of southern Saskatchewan, the town of Cornac is coal country. The resource fuels the nearby coal-fired power plant and mine, along with about 60% of jobs in the area.
Without them, the community is going to die.
The future of the industry and the town are on the ballot this election. Ottawa has committed to phasing out coal-fired power generation by 2030.
If the plant goes down.
This former town councillor and retired plant employee says it's an issue in the back of everyone's mind.
If there's any hope at all of keeping those plants, it probably comes with the federal government.
At Deb's Country Kitchen, 40% of the customer base is linked to the coal industry, but it's tax breaks for small businesses in rural communities that the owner is focused on this election.
More lenience on small businesses trying to make it, we only have a certain amount of people here, not like the cities.
Those eating lunch here weren't too interested in talking politics at the table, but they all have issues they're taking to the ballot box, from firearm regulations and the carbon tax to rural funding and sustainability. The town celebrates its centennial next year, and those that live here want to make sure their community is around for generations to come.
We're seeing some hope.
The provincial government is looking at extending the use of coal beyond the 2030 deadline. If that doesn't happen, the mayor says they'll need federal money to attract new business and create jobs.
The feds, I think they don't even return our calls anymore. Will that change in a week and a bit? I don't know. We're not going to give up.
A fight for sustainability that will continue well past Election Day. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Cornac.
Still ahead, Canada's 45th federal election. A look behind the scenes, what you can expect from our CTV News election special. Election results will roll in tomorrow night, and our coverage is designed to give you all the information you need on a pivotal moment in Canadian history. CTV's Kamal Karamali gives you a peek behind the curtain to see how it's all put together.
3, 2.
The countdown is on.
Rehearsal.
After weeks of campaigning,
Here we go.
it all comes down to this.
We're live right across the country.
Election night. And here is where Canadians will see all the twists and turns unfold.
Well, I think it's going to be a night of high political drama. They always say elections are the Olympics of news.
Chief anchor Omar Sachedina and chief political correspondent Vashi Kapelos will guide Canadians through one of the most critical elections of our time.
What kind of will set us apart is the type of analysis that our panelist is going to deliver. We have top-notch people who have run parties, who have been cabinet ministers.
That team of experts will fill the House for wall-to-wall coverage.
Every seat in this room is going to be filled with, again, some of Canada's top political minds.
Most of the election coverage taking place here, but plenty of action happening elsewhere in the CTV studios. I want you to come with me where we'll see the nerve center for election night called the Power Board, where you'll see live election results and analysis as it comes in.
We'll also be taking a closer look at specific ridings. What were the key issues in those ridings? How do those issues translate into votes?
On television, radio,
welcome to the Breaking News Center,
and online, where the CTV News digital team will be updating every riding across the country.
There's a feature where you can look up your postal code and find out how the numbers are looking in your specific riding.
And with an election this close, CTV's decision desk will be a hotbed of action, looking at the votes from each riding before making a carefully calculated call.
And we're doing all that, in real time as the votes come in.
But the unpredictability is far from over.
What is predictable is that millions of Canadians will cast their ballots tomorrow, counting on us to tell you what Canada decides. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
And just a reminder, our election show starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on all of our platforms. I hope you'll join us. For all of us at CTV National News, I'm Heather Butts. Thank you for watching. Good night.